Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, guys.
Happy days.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
It's pretty light out. It's hard to believe.
Greetings from New Jersey.
Greetings from Pennsylvania. Are they going to move that time back in the fall?
I heard they're gonna leave it alone. I don't know.
Right.
I don't think so. I think they're gonna move it back. I don't think that's gone through yet.
I heard it did not go through, but
Yeah, I
who
don't
knows?
I don't think it's gone through.
Everybody
the
I talked
House-
to,
I heard the House approved it, but the Senate hasn't addressed it.
but everybody I talked to says they'd like to keep the clocks alone in the fall. But why isn't it happening then? If we all want it, or most people, it's
I'm
crazy.
not going to change mine for like a week. This is the first event to be on time for.
There you go.
That was set up for the farmers a long time ago.
That was then. How about now?
They're still ahead of everybody.
The cows know what time it is.
You know, the poor kids have to get up in the middle of the night to go to school.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
We
Jeez.
had to walk in the snow uphill both ways.
I was just gonna
Here
say
we
that.
go. Here we go.
You have more time to play after school.
Bunch of
I know,
old
but-
guys telling war stories.
Right.
You know, the funny thing is, we're all about the same age. And we
No,
all had to
no,
go
no,
to
no.
school.
I look a lot younger than all of you.
There was no buses when I went to school.
Bus zero. My dad dropped me.
I had to start driving my school bus when I was 16 at about 6 o'clock in the morning to make my route.
Wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
John.
All of the South Carolina school buses were driven by teenagers back when I was in school.
Are you kidding me? What?
No, I drove a school bus when I was 16. I drove it in my junior and senior year.
How many kids lived?
Earlier.
All of them, every one. I never had a problem, except one time when the steering wheel shaft broke.
You had buses?
Yeah, we had buses. We didn't have horse and buggies. We had actual Chevrolet V8 powered buses.
With twin SUs?
No, I don't think so. I think they probably had maybe a 2-barrel and a 35-mile-an-hour governor.
But it was still uphill both ways though,
Uphill, right.
Absolutely.
and minus 30.
That was on a warm day.
And gasoline was only 4 cents a gallon.
No, John, the best I ever got was 17 cents a gallon.
I remember filling up my MGA, this is 30 years ago. And I started laughing because it was like $2.50 a gallon. And I remember filling up my MGA for $2.50. But those were different quarters back then. They had a lot more value.
Memphis had a gas war going back on when I was stationed down there in 64. It was going for 11 cents a gallon.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Where
But
were
I didn't
you?
have a car down there on base.
You were in Millington? The Navy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dale.
Okay, all right, I'm all set here. It's 7 o'clock. Marty just reminded me to make sure I stay on speaker view. So I'm trying to do that, speaker view, yep. And anyway, welcome. We got 80 people on right now, but last week when we had somebody from out of town that was a real expert in those LED lights, we had, oh my gosh, 200 and some change, 220 people or something or other on the Zoom last week. So that was like really, really spectacular. For those of you who are new, who've come on the Zoom for the first time tonight, It runs for 2 hours. It's pretty open. If you've got something to say, you can break in and say it. No, don't interrupt us all the time, but you can do it, or more carefully and more precisely, you can put a question over in the chat section. You'll find that on the bottom of your screen. There's a chat thing there. And then when I'm done pontificating about cooling systems tonight, I'll go over to the chat section and I'll call on each person. And you can, I'll read the question, condense it if I have to, ask some questions if I have to. You can introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and then we'll get into answering the question. So I've got a very powerful button here. It's a mute all, meaning that I can mute everybody. And I do use it. I have to use it because there's always somebody with, I don't know, someone's doing dishes or a barking dog or a granddaughter trying to help the grandpa, you know. funny. Somebody did that on purpose. Anyway, you know, I use this mute all button. It's not because I don't like it, it's because I've got to mute y'all. And then if you want to unmute yourself, there's 2 ways to do that. You can go to the bottom left of your screen, at least on my computer you can. Go to the bottom left of your screen and there's a mute, and you can click on that and unmute yourself. Or if you're just going to be talking for a short time, you can depress your space bar. That will unmute you. And then when you're all done saying whatever it is you're going to say, you can release the space bar on your computer keyboard and you will go back into a muted state. And that's really handy. That's real nice. So we go along. I'm gonna do a little bit of intro, and then we'll talk about the subject for tonight, which is cooling systems. Don't have to worry about it right now. It snowed again last night in Grand Rapids, about 4 inches on my car, and but pretty soon we're going to have to worry about cooling systems. Then we'll get into the chat and the Q&A and so forth. So I want to report on what I found tonight. I sent out a constant contact mailer. It went out to 5,938 people. So that's an increase of, I don't know, 50 or 60 over the last time I sent it out. We had a 46% open rate, which means that only 46% of the people opened the email that came. That's a little low. It's usually around 50%, but it's the way it is. And we had 2 people unsubscribe. That's always this knife in my heart. Why would you unsubscribe? And one of them just had a question mark on it. So I don't, you know, maybe he doesn't know why he unsubscribed. And the other one said, no more MGA. So, okay, that's a rational reason. On my YouTube channel, we've got, as of an hour ago, there are 10,202,697 views and 20, oh, I've written this carefully, is it 24,948 subscribers. So this is like gangbusters. And I keep saying, I've got to make more videos. And I don't, but I will. I'm planning to, absolutely. The reason that we can do this, that I can do this, is because I have involved, but people do. Here comes the mute all button. I do have costs associated with this. I just noticed when I hit my credit card bill that Constant Contact is up there. Their rate, or Zoom had one or the other, not by much, but it's more than it was last year. I don't know when that happened. Maybe just this month. Maybe 6 months ago. Sometimes I don't look at my bill very carefully. Anyway, I've got expenses that were Constant Contact with Zoom, and I always say about insurance. It's so silly, but you know, I've got insurance, so that I don't know if your surviving spouse or your kids get mad and think that you listened to some information on here that was wrong and you did something to your car and you sue me, like good luck. But of course, it's not you who's going to sue me. It's somebody else or your insurance company. I've got to have insurance for that. It's silly, but it is just the way it is. Anyway, so as a result, I make a couple pleas during the session to go onto my webpage, universitymotorsltd.com, find the PayPal button, the little yellow PayPal button that says help John afford his retirement, and click on that and make a donation. I sincerely, really, truly appreciate everything that everyone and everything that is donated. I do. And I want to thank those people who have donated since our last Zoom session. So here we go in no particular order. We've got Hal Perlman, Gloria Cook, Ed Cook from Abingdon Spares, Tom Snook, a lot of alliteration here, Doug Miller, Thomas Talone, Tony Shoviak, Henry Morgan, John DeCarly, Gary Maves, John McGarry. Let me go to this next page here. Thank you so much for donating. Ben Andrews, Richard Barkus, Dan Svensson, Glenn Craig, Les Bengtson, Al Hayward, Glenn Nikelski, Ralph Stanley, Dave Terhune, Doug Clark. Doug is our official counter and is most often on. He may be on tonight and lets me know at the end of the session. We've got 150 people on right now. Anyway, Doug Clark from Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, off the subject, I'm going to be at the Chicagoland MG, which no longer just the British car jumble now. It's the all sports car event. But anyway, that's the 26th, Sunday, the 26th of March. If you're in the Midwest, you want to go to a swap meet that has a lot of MG stuff, a lot of other stuff too, Triumphs and Austin Healey's and so forth, but it's largely MG. It's in Wheaton, Illinois, at the DuPage County Fairgrounds on Sunday, March 26th. So you can go on to the Chicagoland MG Club site and get all the details again if you didn't catch that. So it's in Chicago. The Chicagoland MG Club runs this event. So it's a really nice, just talked to Jim Evans tonight. He's one of the two organizers, and they've been doing it for, oh my gosh, 20 plus years. And it's always lots of fun to go and see people. And there's always boxes of used broken parts and brand new parts and all kinds of stuff that's available there. So if you're interested, go. Where was I? Doug Clark, Mark Harris, Quentin Reeder, Greg Fisher, Crystal Johnson, Doug McLaren, Scott Vitarelli, Kurt Johnston, Mark Buchanan, Dave Smittle, Thomas Banks, William Fisher, Scott Lynn, Mr. Garrity, Peter Price, James Simino, Ron Nugent. So from our last seminar, the last Zoom session, those people have contributed. So I thank you very, very kindly for your donations. UniversityMotorsLTD.com and hit the PayPal button. So Marty and I are working on our new site, University Motors, the new UniversityMotors.online site. It's not up yet, but it will be as soon as I get some more technical stuff in there populated. So tonight, I want to talk about cooling systems, just briefly, just an introduction. Nothing exciting, probably nothing that you haven't heard before, but let me just try to organize it. But I got to grab my notes. All right, remember in an internal combustion engine that when things are running perfectly, 1/3 of the energy in the fuel is put into the engine and is available at the flywheel. 1/3 goes out the exhaust and 1/3 goes into the radiator. So you got a lot of heat going into the radiator. There are a couple different sections of the cooling system. There's the engine, of course, itself that's producing the heat. The radiator, which is radiating the heat and moving it into the air. There's the coolant flow. You've got to get the coolant from the engine to the radiator. There's also the thermostat, which is part of the coolant flow. But all of our cars, the cooling systems are great. Not a 1975 midget. Those had problems right at the get-go. There's a design problem. By 76, it's sorted out. But the cooling systems are wonderfully adequate to get rid of all this extra heat that the engine makes in almost every circumstance. So it's not a design problem. It's something wrong with whatever's going on if your car is overheating. And what does overheating mean? Does it mean running hot on the temp gauge? No, because most of the temperature gauges are incorrect. The car should run at around 195 degrees. TDs, TFs, As, Bs, twin cams, V8s, everything should run at about 195 degrees. The thermostat controls the bottom end of that temperature range. What's the top of the temperature range? It just depends. Sometimes it holds right there. My MGA never gets any hot, well, August, okay, idling on black asphalt and so forth. It'll start to creep up above the thermostat rating, but not much. But anyway, the thermostat controls the bottom end of the temperature range. The ability of the car to cool determines the top end of the temperature range. So if your car is running warmer than it should, and you've checked this with a handheld pyrometer that, it's got the laser beam on it, and you can point it and see what's going on. And if in fact you've got a problem getting rid of the heat, the first thing to look at is the engine. Is the engine making too much heat? And almost always the heat that is incorrect, if you've got too much heat coming from the engine, it's a function of the timing. In all of our cars, not the V8 and not the twin cam, but every other car, 1945 through 1980, the timing is 32 degrees before top dead center at full mechanical advance, vacuum disconnected. So with a vacuum disconnected and revved up to 4,000 RPM, you should be running at 32 degrees, not 34, not 30. Some people have taken me to task on that and said that, if you're doing some really dial-in tuning, then you've got all kinds of other stuff available to you. Maybe change the timing a little bit, but really it's critical. It's truly critical. So the first thing to do is to get the engine timed right. The second thing is to make sure that the radiator is open and the water, the coolant is able to get through the radiator. So on a lot of our cars, MGAs are a little more difficult, midgets are difficult, but on the Bs, you can put the back of your hand right up against the radiator and feel across the radiator when the car is running. And it should all feel the same temperature if you're moving in a horizontal direction. There's as much as a 30-degree difference between the bottom of the radiator and the top of the radiator as it gets rid of the heat. But if you're going horizontally across, if you find a spot that's stone cold, and you can find this with your handheld thermometer, the pyrometer. If you find a section that's stone cold, that means that the tubes, the rods, are not open on the radiator, and therefore the coolant can't get through. Therefore, the radiator is not as efficient as it should be. But just offhand, if you take a garden hose and put it in the top and remove the bottom hose and turn just at home with your garden hose, there should be no restriction to getting a full blast from a garden hose through a radiator. Shouldn't be a problem. So there's weird stuff that happens. They can corrode up on the inside. But we took one apart one time that had a mouse nest in it. The guy got his restoration all done, put it together, could not get the thing to cool. And we took the radiator out, and sure enough, you know, when it was sitting underneath his bench or something, after he'd spent $600 to have a new core installed in it, Mr. Mouse made a little house inside it. And it just impacted the ability of the water to get through the new expensive radiator. Also, there's the airflow getting through the radiator. You know, modern MGBs have only a little tiny bit of a slit between the bumper and the bottom of the radiator, bottom of the bonnet, excuse me, that little opening there. But there's a lot of air that comes in from underneath. Most MGBs don't have a problem, but you look at MGAs with all the teeth in the grill. Sometimes you can't see through there. It's like, well, if you can't see through, then how does the air get through and into the radiator? So one of the tricks on an MGA, if you're overheating, is to go, you know, at the same time in the afternoon, go out and drive and just see what the temp is, and then come back and take the grill out. That's no small task, unless you've made the changes to the grill that are outlined in one of the old copies of MGA. For a quick fit, and take the radiator grill out and then go out and drive it. Is it running a whole lot cooler? If it is, well, duh, you know, it has something to do with the position of the grill slats. The coolant flow, the water pump never fails to move the water. Now, that's not totally true. We did, in 50 years of doing this, I found 2 or 3 impellers that have spun loose from their shafts, but only that few number. The water pumps, the bearings fail and the fans wobble horribly. They leak. They do both those things, but even when they're doing those things, they don't fail to move the water. So the water pump is hardly ever the issue in an overheating problem. Some people say, well, I'm going to use water wetter. That was a cool thing, literally, to use for a time, but I don't see that advertised quite so much anymore. It wasn't really snake oil, but I don't know what it was supposed to do exactly. Conduct the heat in and out of the radiator, out of the engine and into the radiator more efficiently. There is a particular problem with a TD engine. If you put the head gasket on backwards, you have the engine apart, put the head gasket on backwards, you're good for about, I don't know, 5 miles. That's it. And then it's grossly overheating, and you can't, you've blocked off the major flow of the water from the pump, pushing the cool water from the radiator, pulling it off the bottom of the radiator and pushing it into the engine. So you can have that problem on a T-type. The thermostat in your car is, if you buy a new one, check it. Take it in the house, put it into a pan, and put a thermometer in there, and just heat it up, and just make sure, if you bought a 195-degree thermostat, make sure that it opens at around 195, because a lot of them are not as good as they used to be. The other thing that thermostats no longer have is a little hole to allow air to escape when you're filling the cooling system. So in the disc around the outside of the thermostat, there used to be just a little 1/8-inch hole. If there isn't one, there won't be one, because they don't put it there anymore. Take your drill and just drill an 1/8-inch hole, drill it through there. I had a guy call me from Atlanta with a TF. He just changed his thermostat. He called me up and he said, you know, I changed my thermostat and I filled it back up with coolant. And he said, I got about a mile down the road and it's just blowing antifreeze everywhere. It's overflowing. It's just, what in the world is going on? I said, well, did you drill the little 1/8-inch hole? And he said, what 1/8-inch hole? So what happened is he put the water in the radiator. the coolant in the radiator, it filled up to a certain point until the air, which was left in the engine, pressurized against the bottom side of the thermostat. So the cold cooling system did not have even begin to have enough coolant in it. And then once it did get hot, of course, it opened up and it was boiling because it couldn't get the water movement. You got to have that eighth inch hole in there. And again, just to comment about temp gauges, the old fashioned GTR 101s and 103s, the thermostatic resistors that screw into your cylinder head, 68 through 80. And on a midget, oh my gosh, 75 through 79, and all the MGCs. A lot of those are built to incorrect specifications, and they tend to read hot. So you can buy a new sending unit, put it in, and the temp gauge is 3/4 of the way across. But if you check it with a pyrometer, hey, it's sitting at 195, just where it should be. If that drives you absolutely bonkers, there's a couple of tricks you can do. You can put a resistor in series, but then if it does overheat, the needle on the gauge doesn't move very much. So we're waiting. We've been waiting for 5 or 6 years for the manufacturer to correct this. And I don't know whether Moss Europe, if those are any better than the ones that we have here. I think they're all made the same plant in Spain, but don't know for sure. Anyway, that's my quick comments about cooling systems. So to begin the conversation, if you've got some notes or you want to ask some questions about the cooling system, just break in and ask. And this is open forum too. So if you've got something to add or something I missed or something you want to correct me on or add to my quick discussion, please do.
John,
Yes.
I had a problem with my radiator years ago, had it flushed out, took it to 3 different shops. They all told me it was good, kept overheating. I finally took it to a 4th shop. He said he'd rot it out. So he took it apart. 2/3 of the bottom was calcified. Because I did what you said, with the infrared, and it was cool down at the bottom, that the water was just not moving. And I actually got into it with an old guy down at the radiator shop in Toledo, because I knew more than he did. I said, look, I took it into 3 different places. I even had it here, and you flushed it. I know years ago I had one boiled out, which they don't do anymore on my MGA, and it worked fine. It's been working fine since we got Leanne. But so if the car's been sitting around for a while with antifreeze in it, maybe 10 years or whatever, that stuff can, just solidify at the bottom, and then you're screwed. So sometimes it makes sense to take it apart and see if either they could rot it out or recore it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, I was going to say that just use the old-fashioned green ethylene glycol. That's the stuff to use in the cooling system. I know there's all kinds of new and improved stuff to use in the cooling system. Old-fashioned green ethylene glycol works just great. Any other comments about cooling systems?
Hey, John,
Yes.
you want to talk about the available water pumps? Back in the 80s, we all had these aluminum bodied water pumps with pressed steel impellers. The new ones that are cast iron have, very good impellers. They're cast iron. They're nearly original to spec, but sometimes the spacing between the impeller and the body is off.
Yes. Yeah. The stuff just isn't made to the same standards as it used to be. I know certainly on the MGC water pump that you can buy, you go to put it up on the block and it doesn't fit. You got to get out your die grinder and carve away some stuff on the side. And the impeller, the closer the impeller is to its I don't know all the technical stuff for the inside of a pump, but there's a V on the inside that the impeller runs in. And the closer it is to that, the more efficient it is. Just like the cooling fan on your car, the closer it is to the radiator, the more efficient it is. So.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 20,000s.
20,000, okay. You can adjust that with a press, be very careful, but you can adjust that. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, talk about also the new bearings. Supposedly they're carbon. They all need to be run in dry, and then you fill the fluid in.
No,
But,
I didn't hear that. I've never heard that before, ever.
Oh, Moss always advertises this on their water pumps, that it's a new modern carbon bearing, and you need to run it dry for about 30 seconds with a drill or whatever, and before
Okay.
you fill it with fluid.
Okay. Very interesting. Thanks.
Hey,
I
John,
was gonna,
this is
yeah, go
Judd.
ahead.
This is Judd down in South Carolina. My camera is still on the blink. If I hadn't made a donation to you last month, I'd have a new camera. But it's worth it. It's worth it. You probably heard me talking about my TD. I mean, it overheated horribly all the time. First off, I pulled the motor, and you would not believe the crud that just garden hose rinsing out of the block came out. Secondly, on the rear, I'm going to call it freeze plug. I know there's a Welsh or some kind of name, but anyway, the previous owner, instead of putting in a proper plug, had put in a great big rubber plumber's plug that was blocking entirely that rear passage. So the water didn't have a chance in the first place. The third thing was the water pump. I think it's Bob Bruno or somebody has a new and improved 6-vein, more efficient water pump. I probably didn't need it, but I wanted it. And I also put a 7-blade, what is it, like an MGB fan on the
Thank you.
front.
Thank you for
And-
saying that. I forgot to mention that the cooling fans,
Yeah,
the T-type ones are easily installed backwards.
yeah,
Because there's hardly a convex and concave side to them, but there is. The MGA fans are easily installed. They don't blow the wrong way. They just aren't as efficient at moving air.
exactly.
MGA fans are really, really commonly wrong. And you can get this, it's an MGB fan. I mean, you open up the bonnet of a TD and here's this MGB bright yellow fan staring at you. It's like, oh my God, no. But
It works like a champ.
is it a driver or is it,
Yeah.
or is it a show car? Yeah.
Yeah. And so lastly, let's say I put that fan on it. I also had the radiator boil out or cleaned out at the local shop, but I probably didn't need that either. Anyway, and I also put the wrong thermostat in. I put a 170 degree instead of 180 degree thermostat. And now my problem, this is a wonderful problem to have. Now my problem is I can never get the damn engine up to operating temperature. I'm running at 160 degrees and it's just barely doing good. And so I have to put a board in front of the radiator. It's a wonderful problem to have.
It might be as simple as the thermostat. So many of those are not, don't open at the temperature that's indicated on the box.
Yeah, I think it is I need a warmer thermostat, and I'm not real sure that, so I've got a what's his name, Tom, up in Maine.
Tom Lang.
Tom Lang's thermostat housing on it. And I'm not sure that the little snap ring inside didn't, maybe I didn't get it seated right, because I mean, that thing, it never gets up to temperature. I think the thermostat's come out and it's just floating around in there.
Okay,
Hey, John, I'm sorry.
yeah, Mark.
Yeah, hey, how are you? Up here in Cleveland, I just removed my oil cooler. I'm gonna try running that. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on running. It's a 74 chrome bumper B.
It'll be just fine. It'll be
what I
just fine. The engines used to make a lot more heat than they did later. You look at a 1963 MGB engine and it's got massive rods and massive lifters and real strong springs on the cylinder head to keep those lifters on the cam. And and 5 rings on the pistons, and it just took a lot of energy to spin that engine over. So there was more heat being created, and they added the oil cooler, but they dropped it off in 74. And by 1980, those engines last 100,000 miles without having to do anything to them. So I don't think it's really necessary.
Well, the other thing is, considering the size of the oil cooler in front of that radiator, I think you're probably blocking some airflow there.
Well, duh. Yeah. I mean, if it's mounted underneath, and it's using different air, but if you're using the same air, it's like, I don't get it. What's the point? But yeah. Thanks.
All right, thanks, John.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Don Bartley over in Valparaiso, Indiana.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the subject of when you guys were talking about having your radiator boiled out with not much success. And my local radiator guy here tells me that you're not going to get a lot of success anymore because of the EPA has taken a lot of the chemicals out that they were able to use in the past that were much more efficient. And now, of course, the results are, kind of like chroming and such like that. He says, quite honestly, you can get, do a lot of it at home yourself with, different products that they sell across the counter that are just as effective as what they have there now in the radiator.
Well, yeah, if you put lye in the system, or call it whatever you want, radiator clean out or whatever, and run that in there with a pretty sweet concentration, and then get it out of there before it does any real damage to the brass. It's just like Drano. It's the same idea of churning that stuff up and getting rid of it. So, and even what Tony talked about, getting your radiator rod and core, first of all, you gotta find a radiator shop, and then will the guy take the top and bottom tanks off and actually run a brush or whatever they do down through the individual cooling tubes. So, yeah.
That would obviously be better than just, I'm talking when you're just soaking it, trying to achieve, cleaning them. And just in case, people, I know that heating those products, acids and such, when they're heated, they're much more effective as well. So if you're trying to do that and you can, get that heated up in a pan on the stove or what have you, you'll have better luck as well.
Sure. So,
hi, John. This is Ian Worsnip in Montreal. I have 2 questions, one about the thermostat and then the other, which was brought up about the oil cooler. I have a 67, so that's something I've been pondering, is just taking my oil cooler off. Because I have had some issues with it running warm. I have an electric fan. It's never really overheated, but I just had my radiator boiled out and cleaned, because we have a guy up here, Willard, who still does it the old way, which is really good. That's the thing about the oil cooler, whether it's good to remove it or not. And then the other thing is, you had mentioned about the thermostat. I have I believe it's an original thermostat, and it has a small hole with a little plunger in it. So no need to drill a hole.
Correct. It's already got the hole in it.
Okay. So back to the oil cooler.
Well, I'd keep, just offhand, I'd keep it on. But if you got problems, if it's leaking, then you gotta spend $48 or $248 for a hose and a cooler and stuff like that. And then you just got to have a pipe that'll go from the engine to the filter, and an MGA pipe will work just great. There's lots of those around, I expect. The later model MGBs used a rubber hose up there. Any rubber hose is eventually going to fail and spew oil.
Definitely.
So,
okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
John, what about on the MGAs, that baffle, that little piece that goes into the radiator neck for the thermostat? block off that one where you got your slit over there in your head where the water comes out. There's a little restrictor that's supposed to.
Well, there's a sleeve. You can get a sleeve. That's for racing. That is to shut off the bypass. On the T-types, it was really complicated. And then on the later cars that they did some internal channeling so that when the car, before the thermostat opens up and the car's running, you still have movement of coolant from the water pump and from the radiator around and around through the cylinder head. I mean, it's still moving. You don't want the water the coolant to just sit in the same spot because some parts will be hot and some parts will be pretty cold. You want it all to even come up at the same temp. So there's this internal drilling through the block that comes off the water pump. On a midget, there's a little tiny impossible to change hose between the water pump and the cylinder head. Well, not impossible, but because I did it, I've done it, but really difficult. Anyway, that blanking sleeve is designed to get rid of that so that all the water all the coolant that's going through the system goes through the thermostat. None goes through the bypass. It's
on the thermostat for those MGAs. Which one do you recommend?
Just a stand thermostat's just fine. Just from the auto parts store. Yeah.
Yes, I've been looking at the brass ones, the original ones they have on there. And Summit Racing has them. I think the part numbers are 180 on that. Same thing on there. I collect them a little bit on the types T's.
Okay.
They're a lot of fun.
You should talk to Fred Horner. He's the expert on SUs. You can be the expert on all the different thermostats. I like the old fashioned ones with those real long, 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch of bellows in them. Those are really in the. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh my gosh, what a beauty! But pick that up a little bit so we pick it up because it's not on the screen. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's great. So. And you're muted right now too, John. So
I don't throw anything away.
No, that's the secret of MG ownership, right?
Yeah, but maybe one less wife who is being with me right now.
Anybody else want to say anything else about
Hey, John?
coolants? Yes.
John?
Yeah, Guido.
John, I was listening to Ian from Canada.
Yes.
And I think he was mentioning removing the oil cooler because of airflow issues, right, Ian?
Well, it's the same air that's going through the oil cooler that's going through the radiator. So.
Yeah, but I think he thinks, I think he's thinking maybe if he removes the oil cooler, he's going to give better cooling through the radiator. I mean, I don't know about that. I got an oil cooler and I don't have any problems.
No, I'd leave it. I'd leave it in place unless.
My 70 MG, I don't have any problems with my MG, my 70 MG. I actually run. I don't take it out in the wintertime, so I only take it out in the summer. And I run a 165 thermostat. Mine.
That's way too cold.
It runs beautiful.
It
runs beautiful.
Once the air is going through the oil cooler, it's heated up and then it's going through the radiator. It's not cool air anymore. That's what they're trying to convey, I think.
Yeah. Well, in the oil does stay considerably cooler than the water. So interesting. What was I going to say? Oh, back in the day when my late wife and I used our MGB GT as all year transportation. I mean, we got out when it was -15 in the garage. You'd start it up and you get about 3 pounds of oil pressure, and then you get 5, and then you get 8, and then pretty soon you had 12 and 20. And after it warmed up, in the meantime, that oil pump is working madly trying to suck that oil off the bottom of the sump. So we took a piece of cardboard and and covered 2/3 of the radiator. I had a hot thermostat, had a 195 thermostat in there, and still had to cover 2/3 of the radiator so that it wouldn't cool too much.
So, John, since the gentleman just mentioned about running cold, what's the impact of the engine if you run too cold?
Then it's the bearing clearances are larger than they should be. And the need to have a richer mixture is there. You got to have the choke pulled out when you start the car when it's stone cold and for a while. So if it's running below the temperature that it should be, then you're going to end up having to run a little richer mixture than you should. So those are all complications that come from that. I tell people, I say, the car's designed to run within a certain temperature range, like 195 to 210, something like that, right in that range. And just like the human body, is designed to run within a certain range, and you get out of that range and some stuff doesn't work as well as it might. But the bearing clearances are one, ring clearances, and the need to have a richer mixture if it's running too cold.
So John,
Yeah.
can you talk about the thermostats? I read something on the MG Experience recently about thermostats that have a fail-safe mode where if they fail open rather than closed. Have you heard about that?
I think I saw something about those, but whenever it says new and improved, it's like it's another system on there that can fail. So it's real rare for a thermostat to stick closed.
I've had a number of them.
Have you? All right. Okay. Recently or a long time ago?
Within the last 5 years.
Interesting. Okay.
And these are brand new.
Yeah, that's okay. That's where I'm going. Okay. All right. Yep. Well, that's, I would just wish they made them better, but better to have no thermostat than a stuck one. So, yeah.
Well, and that's why you test it before you put it in.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Richard Pittenger, Troy, Ohio here.
Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering if you got any tips for a new owner of a 80 MGB as far as doing like a complete flush of the cooling system, heater core, everything. Is there anything that's much different than my 80s American cars?
Well, I'm a real firm believer in the garden hose. So you take the top fitting off the carburetor side of the heater box, and take the hose off the heater control valve, and put your garden hose up against that. It's just a mess. Everything gets wet. You can't help. You get wet, the car gets wet, engine gets wet, and just blow through there. And I remember cars coming in the shop, and you'd get a red silt washing out of the bottom of that heater matrix that would run for 30 seconds before it ran clean. And if you buy some radiator flush, you can put that into the engine, but you got to put it into the engine. You can't put it in the overflow tank on the side. You got to open up the cap that's right on top of the thermostat, and very slowly, mix up a slurry of this stuff, and then very slowly introduce it in there, and then get it hot. Then pull off the bottom radiator hose and flush the whole thing out with cold water after you've run it, so that you're sure that all that crap's out of there, and then just put the other stuff back in. On the other hand, if you're not having any problems, you could make a case for draining the antifreeze and just flushing it, just with a garden hose, and put new antifreeze in it.
So
John, I've used reverse flush kits you can get at most auto parts stores, and they seem to be working good. But like you said, if you're not having a problem, don't mess with it.
So that's the one that you put the little fitting in between the heater and the heater control valve, and
Yeah.
and screw your garden hose onto it, take the radiator cap off and start the car up and then turn the garden hose on slow and just stand away because it's a hot shower. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Don't
Yeah.
stand in front.
Revert, okay, I had forgotten about those, but yep.
So the system will take a full blast of like a 50 PSI blast of my garden hose?
Well, as long as as long as something's open on the other end, yes. I mean, the system's got a radiator cap on it that's designed to blow off at a maximum of about 15 pounds. So you don't want to exceed that in a trapped system. But if you've got some hoses that are open, there's no problem at all.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been able to use the car enough to really know if I got an issue yet or not, but I'm assuming that it probably does need a flush.
Oh, yeah, after this amount of time, for sure.
And the flushing kit has a tube that you attach to the top, where the radiator cap is, and it blows it out. So you relieve the pressure. It's not going to be built up in there. I attached another hose to that one, so it went out on the ground, so it didn't just spray out all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, John,
After a while, you learn.
You might also mention, John, I mean, the antifreeze is to keep it from freezing, and also it raises the boiling point, but also it's got a lot of anti-corrosion stuff in it. And so you really do want to run antifreeze as opposed to, say, straight water or something like that, because you need that anti-corrosion junk in it.
Absolutely. But the question is, if the car is laid still I just had a guy call me up and say his TD, last time he had driven his TD was 1985. So stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you got to go in and do some serious flushing and attention. But does it make a difference? If it's overheating, then yeah. But it's always good to do maintenance. It's always that's my whole life.
Well, I agree with you, but the best continuous maintenance is just drive the hell out of them.
You got it. Yes.
Something that hasn't been mentioned as far as flushing is the B series engines has a little tap on the back of the engine below the heater control valve, and I don't think anybody ever opens that thing up. And I've opened up a number of those when rebuilding an engine, and it's totally clogged with silt or sand or whatever. So you have to like fish in there with a piece of wire or a rod or a drill or whatever, clean all that stuff out to make sure you got some flow back there. Have you seen that, John?
Yeah, but it's just a radiator drain. They took the spigot off there in 1973 or something, maybe at the 18V engine. And the only way to get that open, oh my gosh, there's the holes at about 11 o'clock. Way at the back end of this the blind hole, there's another hole that goes up into the block at about 11 o'clock. So you got to have the cylinder head off. You got to have a real long Phillips screwdriver and you go down in there and scrunch it all around, and you can get it open. But for what reason? It's just a little tiny. It's just a little tiny thing that silts up, and nobody ever drains their block there anyway. I'm not sure why that was there, except maybe people used antifreeze only in the winter. That seems like a dangerous thing to do, because if you miss it by a day, you need a new block.
They probably used alcohol back then instead of antifreeze. So they drained it.
Sure.
I dealt with that in the 60s with some old cars went to the gas station.
Okay.
So, John, the other thing that I think everybody's kind of missed here is when you refill your antifreeze, with the hard water around in most of America, you really should put some distilled water in. It's like $1 a gallon at Walmart. It's really cheap insurance. You don't get all that calcium and stuff into your system in the first place.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it's quickly filled with minerals, 'cause it's gonna be circulating in a cast iron engine, but yeah, sure. I mean, it's only $1. I mean, good grief, so, and you don't need more than need more than a gallon of water, so.
Well, the other side of that is to flush your system every 5 years or anyway. Most of these cars don't get flushed like every 20 years.
Ever.
You know, my 71 has the original radiator, my GT. And finally, just last year, I took it in the radiator shop, have him flush it out. He said there was a very little clog. It was good, but I flush it out every few years, every 2-3 years. I flush it out. Change antifreeze doesn't cost that much. And
You
it's,
do that when you flush your brake fluid.
most people don't.
And that should be annually. But Judd's line is, drive the hell out of the car. And of course, that's what Bob and Gloria do. What do you got, 520,000 on your car now?
Only 509.
Oh, excuse me. All right.
You can capture the water out of your dehumidifier. Also, the dehumidified becomes mineral free also. So if you want to save $1 or $2.
You want to save $1? Okay, all right. You can collect rainwater. Yep. Oh, wait, that's acid rain, right? Whatever happened to acid rain? That was a great big deal, 20 years ago. So was global warming. I mean, it just snowed 4 inches here again. So anyway, enough. That's straight into politics if we go too far here. Are we all done talking about cooling systems? Because I got a lot of questions here on the chat section.
Hey, John, before you go off of that, I got a question.
Yeah.
On the water or the thermostat housing, when you put it back on, I had a problem with the water leaking out through the bolt holes. Is that
Okay.
normal?
Yes. Use a quart gasket. What year do you have?
70.
Okay. So use a quart gasket, grease the quart gasket, just gob it with grease. Grease the studs, grease the nuts, just gob it with grease. Then use a flat washer and a nut, not a lock washer, because it takes so much torque to collapse that lock washer that it ruins the gasket. And then tighten those nuts up only so tight as is necessary until the gasket just starts to move. You can see it start to squish just a little tiny bit. You just watch it. As soon as you see it move, stop. That should do it. And if it does leak a little bit, it'll quit leaking usually. That'll also happen on a new engine, as you get some bubbling up through some studs, which is from the assembly, not from the water cooling, but anyway. So use grease. I didn't mention that. Use grease on the water pump, on the thermostat, and on the heater control gasket. Grease everything. And then it'll come apart next time real easily. Dean, what do you got, an MGA coupe?
Yes, I had a quick question regarding your recommendation on installing the freeze plugs.
Okay. The freeze plugs in the engine, originally, they're hemispherical. You put them in, you get something that's maybe half the diameter of the guy, and give them a couple cracks with a hammer, crack, and it not so it dents it, but so it flattens it, and that then expands the plug, and it won't come out most of the time. But when it does come out, oh my gosh, it's such a hassle. So I mix up JB Weld, not the fast set stuff, just the normal JB Weld, the 2 parts, and stir it all up, and then put the block on its side and smear the stuff in after the freeze plugs are installed, and smear it in between the freeze plug and what's left of the
lip
cylinder. Yeah, the lip that's still in there. And that's just real plastic when you put it in, and it moves around some, and it'll settle and smooth. And when you go to paint the engine, no one's going to see it. No one's going to see it. And then also get the rear freeze plug done also. That's even a worse one to change on the road.
Yes, it is.
So anyway, that's my trade, and it affords you just a little extra insurance. In that is you got to have a lot more pressure available to pop that thing out if it's all held in place with that JB weld.
All right, thanks, John.
Okay, doke.
Hey, John, it's Barney. You got a minute?
Yeah.
I got a couple comments on radiators that nobody seemed to mention.
Okay.
And I hope I got a quieter venue tonight so you can hear me. The MGA uses a cell core radiator originally, which is much different than the tube and fin radiators that come in MGBs and most modern cars. And the cell core radiators cool like crazy. They're wonderful. When these cars were new, they would never overheat. When I restored my car, my younger days, in my innocence, I took my radiator to the radiator shop just to have it cleaned and checked. And the guy looked at it and said, "Oh, that's a 30-year-old radiator. We don't want to touch that. You should have that record if you want a reliable car." So I said, "Okay, we'll have it record." So he did. But what he didn't tell me is that he was taking away my original cell core and giving me a tube and fin radiator core. I got it back in the car and started driving it, and the car ran a little on the warm side. And I was used to driving cars that ran cool all the time. They would never overheat. So I took it back to the radiator shop and kind of complained. And he said, "Oh, well, we'll give you a better radiator core. We got these ones we use in muscle cars and hot rods and stuff, and they cool like crazy." So I pay him the second time to record the radiator, and he puts in a high density core that has more tubes closer together, more fins closer together, put that in the car, and then it would really overheat because it was obstructing the airflow. It's bad. And I've been telling everybody for years, as an MGA is complaining about overheating problems, just put the original cell core radiator back in it. They're kind of expensive these days to get cell cores and get them record, but it's worth every penny of it.
Yeah, you could blow through $800, couldn't you, to get one of those?
Oh yeah, it's like a $600 core plus the labor, special made. I was out in California in July having my engine rebuilt again after a couple 100,000 miles on his road trip. It needed another rebuild. And the shop that I was borrowing out there, his space, he had 3 MGA cell core radiators on the shelf. And we took them down and stuck a bicycle inner tube on them and put a little air pressure in them, test them for leaks. One of them leaked, one of them had some brackets broken off of it, and the third one was good. So we snatched the thing and stuck it in my car, and now it runs at 180 degrees all day long, no problems, never overheating. I took the fan shroud off of it, threw it away. It does have a new 7-blade plastic fan on it, but no more fan shroud, just a standard radiator.
Okay.
We were driving around the Central Valley of California, 104 degrees, rush hour kind of traffic, stop and go and stand still on the hot expressways. And I'm sitting there looking at that thermostat, and it never went over about 195 in the hottest conditions. And then my temperature gauge broke. The pipe broke on the thing, and I lost the temperature gauge. By that time, we had enough confidence in the thing. We drove it from California back to Illinois, 2,000 miles or 2,500 with no temperature gauge. Didn't bother me at all. So I tell everybody that's got an MGA, if you think you have overheating problems, get a cell core radiator back in that car.
So further on this are aluminum radiators that, for someone who's interested in how things look originally, I just want to throw up, but they really, really cool. They're really, really good and efficient in getting rid of the heat. That's my experience. So
I'm not so sure I agree with that. I go to car shows and I see guys with an MGA with an aluminum radiator. And I go, "How do you like it?" And they go, "Oh, it works like a champ. If the temperature ever starts going up, we just flip on the electric fan and it cools right down." And I look at them and they go, "Fan? Electric fan? Here's my car sitting right next to you. Brass radiator, no electric fan. If your aluminum radiator works so well, why do you need an electric fan?" And they never have an answer for that.
correct. Hey, thanks. Where are you at tonight, Barney?
Macon, Georgia.
Okay. Okay, do we have any more comments about cooling systems? We've talked about this for
Hey, John.
Yes,
Yeah, this is Mark from San Jose, California.
yes, sir.
And I was just, I kind of come on late and I didn't know if anybody discussed that waterless coolant. And if you have an opinion on that, I know it's expensive.
I don't know anything about it at all, only that it's unnecessary if everything else is okay. But other than that, you guys got lots of water out there now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're floating in water right now, so we're all good.
But I don't know anything about that. There's a lot of new and improved stuff for modern vehicles that are like altogether different, gel batteries, and I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff that's different. And I don't know. I have no opinion on it at all.
Well, I just thought maybe I could get it. I know it don't boil, so that's all I know for sure. But I read up on it a little bit. But thanks for sharing that with me.
Yeah, well, in a normal car, I don't know what a 50-50 antifreeze solution does with a boiling point, but it does take it up. I don't know if it takes it up 10, 15 degrees. And then you put a cap on it, and for every pound that you have on a cap, you raise the boiling point by 3 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you get a 7-pound cap, you get an extra 21 degrees before it boils. So you got to be up to 240 degrees or something before it actually spills out of the radiator. And as long as the engine's full of water, you can't hurt it. As long as it's full of water, you can't hurt it. No matter how hot the water is, you can't hurt it. So once the water's gone, oh my gosh, the temperature will start to spike. And there's all kinds of trouble. But as long as there's water in there, you're okay.
Yeah, I have an expansion tank someone put on there. It's not the stock unit, but it seems to work well. And I also use the distilled water with a 50-50 mix there. So seems to work okay.
John,
thank you.
Before you leave this, let me tell another tale of woe. You had mentioned the freeze plug. The engine rebuilder or the block guy that did that decided he'd put my freeze plugs in instead of me. And he did exactly what you said about flattening, except one of them. He didn't, he overlooked it or whatever. So I'm driving down the road. We'd gone about 75 miles. And the guy behind me in the TD said, "What's your temperature reading, Judd?" Because I just saw the biggest cloud of steam I think I've ever seen come out of a car. And I looked at the temperature gauge, and it, instead of being up, this is centigrade, instead of being up around 90 where it normally runs, it was 50 and dropping. So one thing to remember is you got to have water on that temperature sensor for it to read. I had lost all the coolant, and you kind of inherently think, well, it would get, the gauge would go up, but the gauge will go dramatically down if you lose all the coolant in a catastrophic loss like that. Fortunately, I was able to pull over and no harm was done to the motor.
Yeah, that's on a MG where the sensor is in the radiator and not in the engine, but they corrected that. They corrected that with a TF. You know, they put the sensor in the engine. So
I don't drive those modern cars. This was a TD. I didn't know.
All right. Okay.
So just one last question too, then, on the gentleman that talked about the 1980 with the temperature sensor for the fan, and the filling the radiator. I mean, the reservoir has a rad cap on it. You get an airlock there, and sometimes the water doesn't get on the temperature sensor and the fan doesn't come in.
Correct. So at my shop, we used to have a pumper upper. It was really nice. You'd put coolant in the tank and pump it up and relieve the pressure, and then by pumping it up, you'd push the coolant into the cooling system, and then by relieving the pressure, air would come out, and you do that until no air came out anymore, and then you knew the system was full. When you don't have a pumper upper, the only way you can go at that is to take the filler off the top of the radiator thermostat housing, which originally was black plastic which broke. Well, so many of them broke, but it's a 1/2 inch British standard pipe thread. And it's the same as a TD sump brass plug that for the oil, for the sump on a TD. Although I've seen American stuff screwed into there, anything will work as it fits. But anyway, that's where you fill it, through the top, not through the side. So thank you very much for saying that. That goes on the MGC also, which is a trapped system that has a necessary expansion tank. And for those with a later 1100. Here's the barking dog. I got to hit the mute all, just a moment. There we go. Okay.
And so, yeah, a lot of.
So anyway,
Yeah, your runs were.
we're going to try mute all once more. There we go. All right. So do we have any more questions about cooling systems? We've gone.
I do, John. I have.
Jim.
How did you fill the MGCs at the shop?
You know, if you take the line off the heater control valve and open up the heater control valve, then you can make and you pump it up. You use a pumper upper. You can get one of those, a stamped tool to do that. Then you pump it up until water comes out of the heater control valve, and then you know you don't have an air pocket inside the cylinder head.
Okay.
That's it. That's the only way that I know of. Yeah. Yeah, and MGC, and that's one of the complaints on an MGC is they run hot, you know, and for a couple of reasons. One, you can't get enough coolant into it easily enough. And the other one is that there's a design problem inside the block sometimes that restricts the movement of the coolant. So.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Pat G has had his hand up for a while. Has he still got a question?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, look at that. He's all right, Pat. Yeah, Pat's an old BMC mechanic from California. He always has something to add. What's up, Pat?
Well, I wanted to talk about common failures I've seen, just dumb mistakes, like the wrong radiator cap on MGAs. You know, it's a deep cap. So people will put the 1/2 inch reach cap in there and it's wrong. System doesn't pressurize. MGCs with the wrong thermostat. You have to use a bypass thermostat, and when it opens up, it closes off the bypass. And that'll make them run hot. But I wanted to add a funny story about the MGA, right? So the factory knew they had problems getting airflow through the radiator. So they had a brainstorm. Oh, the problem is we're building up too much air pressure in the engine compartment. So they added vents to the top of the fenders. You know, those oval shaped grills with the little scoops underneath.
Yep.
Well, nobody bothered to check and see that where they put those is a high pressure area. So at high speed, you have high pressure actually making air going into that vent instead of out.
There was an MGA owner who worked for Ford who put his MGA in a
wind tunnel.
And this is a long time, 1980, long time ago. And it turned out that if you blocked off those vents, those oval vents, you got more air through the radiator. Yep.
Canadian milk, cream, and culture.
I've got to hear
John, you got to hit mute all.
Here, Doug, you're going to have to unmute yourself again because Graham keeps unmuting. And anyway, Doug, go ahead. Doug Miller, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I just wanted to ask you to mute everybody because he kept popping back up.
Right.
Thank you.
Trying it. Yeah. Okie doke. All right. Well, let's go over to the chat section. Oh my gosh. Well, otherwise we'll end up talking about cooling all night. Neil Bryden, you can come on if you're on, Neil. We got 186 people on right now. When you looked at my MG64B at Peterborough, you said my fan blades were backwards. My temp gauge usually reads around 140, 150. So I'm not sure what's going on. So Neil's from Collingwood. Are you on still, Neil?
Yeah, I'm on, John.
Okay, well, imagine that you take your hand and you're trying to scoop sand out of a sandbox. You can get sand heaped up on the back of your hand, but if you're scooping with your hand underneath, you're getting a lot more air. So you are getting enough cooling, but in some circumstances, you're not going to be able to move enough air through the radiator as you should. So that's if you're not experiencing a problem, there's no problem. There isn't a problem at all. And 140, 150 is like stone cold. It isn't if you feel it on your body, but that's real low. So two things are going on here. Your fan blades run backwards, and just someday when you got the radiator out, when you've got nothing else to do, you turn them around, I guess. But I think your temp gauge is wrong too, because I don't think the car is going to run well at 140, 150. That's real low. So, and without shooting it with an infrared thermometer, you aren't going to know really what's going on.
Yeah, the temp gauge was replaced a few years ago, so it could be just an issue there. Years ago, I had a problem with an overheating, so I suspect that when I had some engine work done, there's probably not a thermostat in there right now either.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll have all that checked out before I put it back on the road.
Yeah. Okay.
For the summer.
So
Anyway,
I took the 405, or 407. What's the one that goes from all the way around the top of Toronto?
yeah, 407's the
It's $100. If
yeah.
you go from Peterborough down to the 401, it's $100. I got anyway. It just I was happy to pay it. I mean, I was just surprised how much it was, but I was happy to pay it, and I didn't have to do stop-start traffic on the 401. So
I was going to say it's worth $100 not to go through Toronto on the 401.
it sure is. Yep. All right. Well, hey, thanks.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to get to another message here. Here we go. From Mike Tremblay. Hi, John. Am I allowed to record this for details on the cooling system? Sorry, it took so long. Yes. And I also make a recording of this, and it goes up on YouTube. It'll be up on YouTube sometime in the next week, maybe tonight, probably not that fast, but it should be, could be. I don't know if I put up the last one or not on YouTube yet, but on my YouTube channel, University Motors, you can find them all there. David Basili, what technique do you use to ensure the air is removed from the top of the radiator after replacing the coolant? So David, we're talking about a 77 through 80 MGB. Are you on? Waiting for David. But anyway, the 77 through
John,
80.
it's a 1980.
Okay, how do you pronounce your last name?
Balsillie.
Balsillie. All right. Okay.
You keep messing that up, by the way.
I'll thank you for your donations, and I will do my best to get your name right. But you got a 77 through 80?
I got an 80, and I just put in aluminum radiator, and it has that high spot on one side.
Yes.
And I know from previous things that you've talked about, you got to make sure you get the air out of that area when you refill the coolant. And so I was just wondering, you talked a little bit about it. How do you make sure that you get the air out of that when you refill?
Well, without a pumper upper,
right?
That I've been talking about. Without that, you fill the cooling system up until you can't get any more into it through the filler on the top of the thermostat housing, and then put a lot of coolant in the overflow tank. Go out and drive it. As the coolant expands, it'll push the air out of the system and into the tank, into the overflow tank, and then when it cools, it'll draw fluid back into the engine. So you only can do it by natural expansion and contraction. That's the only way. There's no other way that I know of to get, because it's an air pocket. So in your chances are it'll water expands a lot. It expands a lot when it gets hot, and it'll force that air out of there and into the overflow tank.
Oh, and just as a technicality, I never add water. I use always the 50-50 mix, so I just go with that.
I've been saying, I've been trying to correct myself at each point here and call it coolant instead of water, but
Okay.
that's what I mean to say, yes.
Okay, and one other thing, you know, I went with this aluminum radiator, which I'm very happy with. But one thing I did notice is the sensor that goes in the top of the radiator for the electric fans.
Yes.
It was a different size for this aluminum one. I replaced the one I had in my original radiator into the new aluminum radiator, and it was really kind of sloppy in there. It was not the exact same diameter. I put some sealant around it, but I was just wondering, is there a different kind of sensor that goes in there on the aluminums versus
The 77 through 79 had one sensor, the 1980 had another with a clip around it.
Right.
So it wouldn't pop out. We found the part number, the original part number of that switch was URP 1126. So we called it an ERP switch because URP is pronounced ERP. And there was also an ERP seal, the URP 1127. But that was really shallow, and we ended up getting the Jaguar seal. I don't have the part number available, and it probably of no consequence now, but Jag uses the same one, and it's got a much deeper rubber on it, and we use those. In addition, you take the hose clamp that's on the top of the radiator, turn it around so the barrel is right behind the sensor, so the sensor can't pop out because the barrel's in the way. And then lastly, if all that fails, you take a zip tie and cut it to half its width, which is really pretty easy with a pair of shears, and then feed that through the radiator and loop it around between the wires and cinch the thing tight, and it'll stay in place. So those are all ideas.
Okay, and then one last thing, you talked about drilling a hole in the thermostat, an 1/8-inch hole. Where exactly does that hole go?
Well, there's an annulus between the valve and the disc that actually sits in the
Okay.
there's a I don't know, quarter 1/8 of an inch
Flange?
circle around the valve, anywhere in there.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to get my.
Real quick, John.
Yeah.
Follow up to what he was just saying. The common name for your tool is a pumper upper.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called. It's sold by Stant. You can buy them at the auto parts store.
The cooling system pressure tester. It has a pressure gauge on it.
Okay, a cooling system pressure checker. Okay, and it does have a pressure gauge on it. And that's when I was talking to Glenn at Glenn's MG service. And he said, not only are the thermostats bad, but the radiator caps are bad now too. He said, I put a dozen of them on it to see where they blew off. They were all over the place. They were not at the setting that was on the box. So, yeah. All right, now we're going on to Doug. And when checking the coolant level on my 54 TF and 69 MGB, neither of which has an overflow tank, when the engine is cold, remove the radiator cap. How close to the top of the radiator should the coolant or antifreeze level be? Doug, are you still on?
Yeah, John, I am. Yes.
All right. So if you overfill it, it's going to piss out on the. I'm sorry. I got a lot of background noise. I got to hit the mute all button here. There. It's not because I don't like you.
Just go out on the garage floor after I drive. I realize, but I check it once a month.
Then it stabilizes. If if you keep adding it, it's gonna keep pissing it out on the floor. But it can sit down. Oh my, the water expands a lot. It can sit, an inch below the neck.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll blow out about 1 pint of water with the heat cycle. And when it cools off and goes down in the MGA, it's right at the bottom of the filler neck. It's really hard to see if there's coolant in it or not. I put a little overflow tank, a plastic overflow tank on the side so I can watch the water level go up and down.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, yep. We're at 183 right now.
We were at 192, so.
Oh my gosh.
It's kind of like the temperature going down a little bit, John, a good parallel comparison there. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Wayne in Slow, it says, we need a special award for any shade tree mechanic that has installed a cross member on an MGB. I'm close to finishing mine and wonder why no one has redesigned the cross member. I've seen holes drilled underneath so that you can tighten up I've seen holes drilled there like an inch hole. So you can get a socket through there and tighten up the blocks, those big blocks underneath there. I have seen that. But you're right. Speaking of articles and new ideas, every time I had to ask about brake pads, I had to go back to Bob and Gloria. But there's an article about brake squeal in the MGB driver, the tech issue of the driver. There's a lot of information here about brake squeal. So there are people out there all the time, and the trick is to belong. If you're an MGB owner, belong to the B register, and also go on MG Experience. There's just a lot of information there. There's also a lot of chaff. And you got to separate the wheat from the chaff on the big sites. But still, somebody's improved that. I made a video, about how to get it all straight and everything, but I just had to do one, I don't know, last fall, and there's like 8 different positions or 16 different positions, and it drove me crazy for a little while. So, there's my timer to remind everybody to go on my website, universitymotorsltd.com, and find that PayPal button and thank me for hosting tonight. Okay, Marty Bradley, University Motors .online is live. Thank you, Marty. Doug Miller, should be a shout out to Marty for keeping John organized. Yes, there should be. Thanks, Marty. The new site looks great. Just gave it a quick look. Let's see, Richard Stokes, don't try that in an MGA, you'll lose a finger. So Rich must be hearkening back to me suggesting that you put your hand on the front of the radiator, not the rear of the radiator with the fan moving there. No, that would be a bad idea. But in the front of the radiator to feel across it to see if you got some stone cold sections there. Don Bartley, what is your opinion of water wetter additive? Just offhand, it's snake oil, but that's you asked for my opinion. It's unnecessary. It was the hot thing. We tried it for a while at the shop. We had cars that we couldn't get sorted out. We're running too hot, and we put water wetter in it. Would that help? You do 2 or 3 things at once, so it's not a scientific test. It'd be interesting to see what the scientific test tells you. But you'd have to monitor the temperature at the bottom of the radiator. You'd have to have some probe there and go out and drive your car on a July afternoon, for 25 miles and watch the temperature at the thermostat and at the bottom of the radiator, and then put in the water wetter and make the same drive, theoretically at the same temperature and the same speed, and see if it made a difference. But I wouldn't suggest it to anybody.
John, you also can't mix water with it at all.
Oh, all right. right. Okay, water wetter?
It's like, well,
I just lost you. Ed.
no, the coolant that they used to sell, it's not, you just fill your whole system with it, not water wetter.
Evans
forget what it was called.
coolant. Evans coolant.
The waterless stuff.
Yeah, waterless coolant. And you have to like silicone brake fluid, you have to get all the water out of the system, as I understand it, before you can use it.
Okay, thank you. So so many years ago, I get to hit the mute all here, and okay, so many years ago, we had a customer, Dion, and he had an Aconite 74. No, it was Black Tulip. I think it was a Black Tulip 73 BGT. And he's driving in the winter, and it was overheating, and he stopped at the filling station. And of course, it was in the middle of the winter, so they didn't have the cans of water out next to the pumps. And he went inside and said, I need a can of water to put water in my car because it's running too hot. And so he poured the water in the engine and came back and asked for more water. And the guy goes, "More water? Where are you putting it?" So the mechanic went out, back when there was a mechanic on duty at the gas station, pulled the dipstick out of the engine and water came up out of there because all the oil was sitting on top of the water. Yeah, so make sure you put the coolant in the radiator, not in the engine. Pat G, the horrible water pumps made by GMB had those plastic impellers that would melt. Yeah, I only saw a couple of them, Pat, that were ever melted, but those are the ones that would then spin free. I remember one time, one of the aluminum ones, Harry Haig, who was one of the guys working at Moss that did quality control, called me up. He says, "Some guy's telling me that he's got a aluminum water pump with a steel impeller." He says, "I've never heard of such a thing." And I said, "Well, go out in the stacks and look, Harry, because that's what you guys are selling right now." The water pumps that sell now, that Moss sells, are beautiful, are great. They're cast iron pumps. I think they're County. Are those all come from County, Ed Cook?
The ones we get the Moss ones, or we get them from Scarborough Fair also. She manufactures them too.
Yeah, there's such nice pumps now. Yeah. Okay, all right, here we got Steve Olson, my TR8. This is not a Triumph. Night here. My TR8 water impeller did spin off the shaft. Of course, I was 150 miles from home and didn't know that was the problem. Oh my gosh, Steve. Oh my gosh. Pat G, water wetter this is Pat G from California. Water wetter lessens the surface tension of the water. A little dish soap works too. Okay. Judd, a lot of us with TDs have mismatched cylinder heads, round holes versus banana holes. With a round hole block and a banana head, which gasket? Round. With a banana head and a round head, with banana block and a round head, round gasket. So you always default to the round gaskets. So that's in the workshop manual.
Thanks.
Yeah, Steve Olson, 75 and 76 midgets use mechanical temp gauges. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for reminding me. Yep, the safety gauge that had the oil pressure on the bottom, and by 79, there's no oil pressure gauge left on a midget. They didn't have one in there, and it was too expensive. You wouldn't want to know what it was anyway. So anyway, yeah, they went to the electric gauges after that. Let's see, and then we get a note from David here about where to drill the hole, but we got that sorted out. From Joe Mick, I had an issue draining coolant from the block, a drain plug behind the distributor. I found it plugged from fallout from the lack of coolant changes. Yes, we were talking about that. That coolant tap back there, and they're just, without taking the cylinder head off, it is nigh impossible to get that cleaned out. But practically, it doesn't, you don't need to drain the block anyway, really. But if it's plugged up and you want to have it open, you gotta take the cylinder head off and grind all that crap out from down there with that long Phillips screwdriver.
John,
Yes,
would it help to jack the back of the car up while you're draining the antifreeze, to get it out of the block?
well, I suppose, just like jacking up the corner of the car to help get the water but we're not looking for 100% here.
Right. The other thing is, if there's water remaining in the block, when you put in a 50-50 mix, it's going to dilute it down, isn't
Well,
it?
yeah, but by how much? It's not consequential. I don't.
Because I've got one, my MGA store in the storage facility, it's not heated. The other ones are in the garage, so it doesn't get down to freezing, but the one out is out in the country, so it gets rather cold out there. Okay, just a thought. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Let's see, we've got Doc Rosefear. Where do you aim the pyrometer when checking the engine temperature? At the same place that the sensor is, which is immediately below the thermostat. So on the right-hand side, right above the generator alternator on a B or an A, right there, right where the sensor is. And you can check it in a bunch of other places too, just for fun, to see what's going on. You can check the legs of the if you want to know how your carbs are tuned, you can check the legs of the exhaust manifold. The front and rear ones ought to be the same temperature. Pat G, interesting note about MGA cooling. The factory knew they had airflow problems. So he's already talked to us about this. In those oval vents, apparently an MGA cools better if those are blocked off. Rich, to everybody, do you recommend a non-clutch fan water pump for a Spitfire on a 75 1500 midget? So there's a clutch. There's a several $100 clutch that allows the cooling fan to really come on only when it's hot. So we used to take 2 hose clamps. I know I've got a YouTube video up about this. I'm sure I do, about taking a pair of hose clamps so that the little barrels are balanced 180 degrees out, and putting a hose clamp between the angle of the front pulley and the back of that fan clutch, and it locks the fan clutch tight, so the fan runs with the water pump. It doesn't freewheel. So I would recommend doing that. Yes. Pat G, 6-blade impeller water pumps originally made by Clover Machine in San Jose. No longer available, but very rebuildable. A washing machine seal and common bearings. It's interesting, Pat. Thank you very much. Clover. Which pumps? T-type?
I'm sorry. Those were T-series water pumps.
Okay.
The brass-bodied water pumps.
Oh yeah. Oh, those beautiful ones. Yeah. Yeah.
If you need one, John, I know a guy who has a stash.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Paul, the MGBs in the home market in the United Kingdom kept their oil coolers after 74. Why? I was unaware of that. I figured it was cost. I figured it was a cost deal. In between the two countries, England's generally speaking cooler than we are. So that's very, very fascinating, Paul. Which Paul am I talking to on this one about the MGBs in the UK? Don't know, but that's interesting. I'll ponder that. Richard Bittinger. Oh, go ahead,
John. Could it be that the UK market cars had higher compression?
Could be. But it's still, there still isn't, you're not changing the amount of heat coming out of the engine a lot. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. I figured that they came off at the same times. That's interesting.
Yeah, they also kept the dual carburetors after 75.
They kept single circuit brakes until 79. Yep. Interesting. All right, Richard Pittenger, please comment on the use of Gunson Color Tune to help me set the fuel mixture on my 1980 MGB Zenith Stromberg car. So, Richard, I just offhand, I wouldn't use the Color Tune. I just offhand, I wouldn't use it. But if you want to use it, it's a window into the inside of your cylinder. If you're going to use it, then get the flame real orangey. They tell you, Gunsons tell you, to make it a blue flame like you'd see on your stove. Won't work on our cars. Our cars idle rich. So you want to have an orange flame. John. Go ahead.
John, an orangey flame, you mean throughout the operating parameters, or?
Well, usually you're just setting it up at idle. Because as soon as you start to put some speed on it, the pressure's increased a lot. So, and I always think of that Color Tune as kind of a gimmicky thing. I judge the change in RPM by lifting the air piston. That's the way that I do it. It's you got to have that 1/8" Allen wrench with a barrel around it. You put down inside the air piston, turn it clockwise, it makes it richer. You put both these tools down inside the air piston and turn them opposite directions slightly, and then you can lift up on the air piston. And if by lifting up on the air piston, you get a change in RPM, then you can go ahead and decide whether it's good or bad. If you lift the air piston ever so slightly, I mean, just ever so slightly, and the RPMs tremble and fall away, that means it was too lean to start with. On the other hand, if you lift the air piston higher, and it goes faster, it's way too rich. What you're looking for is as you just begin to lift that air piston, and again, you can't lift it with your finger. You can't tune the car with the air filter off. It's all got to be in place. So you got these two parts of the tool, and you turn them in opposite directions, just slightly, so it loads and catches the piston, and lift that air piston just a little tiny bit. You want the RPM to increase about 50 to 75 RPM and then fall away. It's kind of a dicey thing to hunt for, but that's it. But if you're using the Gunson Color Tune, you go for that orange flame at idle. Okay. All right. Now we'll go on to our next one here, Doug Miller again, 1980 MGB gonna tow, 4 tires on the ground. Should I drop the drive shaft? There seems to be a difference in opinion. Well, if you drop the drive shaft, there's no damage that you can do to the gearbox. If you look at the gearbox and you see how it's constructed, and you see how it's oiled, you'll realize that by turning the rear flange and not the first motion shaft and the lay gear, there's no oiling going on. So how to get more oil going through there? You can grossly overfill the gearbox, but then it's going to run into the clutch. That's no good. So taking the drive shaft off, I think is a good thing. On the other hand, I think I've only ever talked to 2 people ever who told me that they had a problem, discovered a problem, towing the car. And of course, it depends. If you're going to tow it 50 miles, that's one thing. If you're going to, if you're going to tow it 15,000 behind a motorhome on an expedition, around the United States, that's something else. And then if you are going to take the drive shaft off, what a hassle. You know, you can't just drop it off the rear axle and wire it up, because that wire's gonna break and it's gonna fall. You're never gonna know what's going on. It's all gonna rub together and get all crunched up and ruin stuff. So you gotta take the whole drive shaft off if you're gonna take it off. Depends on how many miles you're gonna tow it. So Doug, are you still on?
Yeah, thanks. It's 1,800 miles. I've towed it before with a custom tow setup that it was made for the MG, and I dropped the drive shaft both times. I was just curious, 20-some years later, if there's a difference.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to crawl underneath there and get that drive shaft back up there. You know, I don't know.
I have the right answer to that, John.
Okay.
You don't have to disconnect the prop shaft. You can tow it all around the world, no problems. If you look in the gearbox schematic, there's a front bearing, a center bearing, and a rear bearing. And most of the gear stuff is between the front and the center bearing. Just aft of the center bearing, there's a piece on the main shaft called spool or spacer.
Yeah, that's the oil pump.
That's actually a helical groove oil pump. And when you're towing the car, the bull gear for first gear dips in the oil, splashes oil up in the gearbox, and just over the side cover, there's a little rain gutter kind of thing that catches the oil and guides it back into the center bearing area. It actually goes below the center bearing, comes up underneath the spool where that scroll is, and that pumps oil inside of the spool and then into the main shaft, goes forward and oils the bushings in second and third gear and the spigot bearing in the front.
Okay, all right. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. I never thought that gear was large enough. I never considered. I was always thinking of the speed gears, you know, being just not turning, because the lay gear isn't turning, but the first gear is turning. And on an all synchro MGB, the reverse wheel is turning. So you're right. It's throwing some oil, not as much as during normal operation, but it's throwing some oil up there, and that oil pump is pushing it to where it should be. So okay, so I've changed my mind here from Barney's explanation. So I'd say you don't have to take the drive shaft off.
Just be sure you do have oil in the gearbox.
Thank you, guys.
Okie doke.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Richard Pittenger here again. Could I just back up to that ZS carb a second?
Yes, sir.
You know, when the initial setting for that, you know, with the tool, with the Allen wrench tool down in the damper, should the place to start be with that little screw set fully counterclockwise? You know, there's only like maybe 2 or 2.5 to maybe 3 turns total down there.
Just start it. It'll run in any position. Just start it up and make your adjustments from there. You know, maybe you can tighten it up all the way and then back it off 2 full turns.
Tighten it up, you mean fully rich?
Clockwise, yeah, all the way rich, and then back it off 2 full turns. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks again.
Okie doke. Let's see here. We're going down. Graham, what do you think of the Speed Hut speedometer gauge? I haven't a clue. Graham, are you still on? What is the Speed Hut speedometer? Is Graham still on? I don't hear Graham here, but I don't know what.
Yeah, here I am.
Oh, all right. Okay. Is that a GPS speedo?
Yes, it is. And it's sourced somewhere in Utah, I believe. And my speedometer is shot, and it's in my 67 MGB. I think you're replacing it with a Speedo Hut.
Well, you could, or you can just find a used Speedo and put that in too.
Well, the trouble is, I think it may be all the way back down to where it goes into the trans.
Okay, All right,
So I don't want to replace all that.
okay. As long as all those satellites stay in orbit, we're home free.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah. So I think Ukraine would like that too.
Yeah, if the Chinese bring down some of those satellites, we got more to worry about than how fast we're going in our MGBs. So
Exactly.
John, can I comment on something to Graham? I'd love to hear the results. I was driving my MGA through our twisty mountain roads and using a Garmin and looking at the speed that the Garmin was reading out. And what I noticed is the Garmin assumes you're going to go in more or less a straight line. And if you're going around tight S's, the Garmin speed gave you the speed from point A to point B as the crow flies, but you're going a lot farther than that around the S's in that real tight mountain roads. And so it was very accurate on more or less straight roads and very, very inaccurate on really tight, twisty roads where you don't care what it is anyway, because you're going as hard as you can go and you can't go any faster because of the road. But still, it is the nature of the GPS that it samples every now and then, and it doesn't really understand real tight, twisty roads.
Judd, I'm going to let you expand on that for another couple of moments. I'm going to take a break here.
I just came back from mine, so I'm good to expand.
All
Yeah. Graham, it'd be interesting when you put that speed hut in. I don't know what the road situations are like where you live, but I'm here in South Carolina in the North Carolina mountains in the West. And there is a definite speed drop off indicated on the GPS unit that is not the same as what your actual speed is in the car, because of the sampling time lag that the GPS does. It doesn't realize that you've gone not a straight line between sample A and sample B, but a long curved line between those two. Just an interesting feature. And I don't know if anybody else has had experience with GPS. I'd like to hear.
Well, if you were driving around in circles with the right sampling rate, it might think you're standing still.
Absolutely, yeah, and sometimes, you know, your little car thingy, the emblem on the map, in those mountains, it would have us over there in the valley. I mean, it would lose track of where we were altogether.
Well, thank you. I'm looking at someone, a friend of mine, not far away. I live in Ontario, Canada, and he's installed one, and he seems to be very happy with it.
I think in general, it's a great idea. But I just had that observation from a drive we did, I think 2 weeks ago.
What's that? Yeah, but I think basically there's to be good on.
They're talking about GPS.
Oh, here.
S term.
I'm sorry. I gotta hit the mute all. Sorry. So Don Bueller, go ahead and unmute. Don, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. But there was too much background noise there. I had to stop.
I'm going to investigate this speed hut a bit more to see. But there's a friend who's within about 50 kilometers of myself, and he's installed one and seems very happy with it.
Where are you from?
Ontario.
Okay.
And about 2 hours north of Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
You don't have to, there aren't any police up there, are there? You don't have to worry about how fast you're going anyway.
Oh, yes. There's a good story actually about a chap speeding along, and he saw a police car in his rearview mirror. So he kept speeding a bit more and more. And eventually he said, I better stop. So he stopped, and the policeman came up to him and said, I'm just near the end of my shift and you've been speeding. Give me a good reason why I shouldn't give you a ticket. The chap said, well, my wife ran off with a police officer about 6 months ago and went away. And I thought you were coming to chase me down to bring her back.
Okay, that's good.
He didn't get a ticket.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, thanks very much, everyone.
Hey, you're very welcome. Okay, we got Gerald, I'm gonna have to mute all here. We're gonna mute everybody down again. Gerald Dalton, quick question, 75B, what color do I need to splice in an inline fuse for the overdrive and the fuel pump? Okay, so Gerald Dalton, are you still online?
I am Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay, so there are two different circuits here. There's a single white wire that goes into the rear wiring loom. And that's at the junction of all the wiring looms at the rear of the right front inner fender where they all come together. And the rear wiring loom has got about a dozen wires in it, and one of them is just straight white, and that runs the fuel pump. I'd suggest you don't fuse the fuse pump, because why? And because that wire never burns up. I mean, just my experience, that wire never burns up, but it is unfused. It is unfused. Then the overdrive also connects into the same place. Excuse me, it does not. It's a yellow wire. And it goes down into the gearbox loom. And the gearbox loom has only got 3 or 4 wires, a green with brown, which are the reverse light wires. And then there may be another wire for a sensor for the position of the gear lever. And then there is a yellow wire. And that one, yes, absolutely fuse that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm the one that burned up the wire harness here last year with the when the starter solenoid shorted out against the case. So I finally got around to changing that, and I'm just about ready to fire the car up.
And you want to fuse everything. I understand.
You better believe it.
I understand. Okay, all right. Okay.
I put a battery cutoff switch in tonight, so I was an hour late for your meeting, but I was finishing that up. So yeah, I'm trying to make sure I don't.
When I built my daughter's 73 MGB GT teal blue one, she's in Los Angeles and she wanted some anti-theft stuff in the car. So we switched the fuel pump. That's always a good one, because if someone does get away with the car and the fuel pump isn't working, they'll get what, 100 yards down the road and the car quits. What, they're going to get out and try to fix it? No, they're going to run away. But anyway, yeah, we put a battery cutoff switch in that. That's real nice, as long as it's a nice clean installation. Yeah.
I got a question about that. This is Marty. I've gone through at least a half a dozen battery cutoff switches, the original style Lucas brand with a nice black knob on them, and they keep failing. When I'm driving 20 to 40,000 miles a year, they don't last a year. And I've gone through so many of, most of the time, the battery cables are just connected together and the switch is disabled. I want to know if anybody has a recommendation for a good battery cutoff switch that's not going to fail on me.
Barney, get a Hella.
Yurko. A Yurko Marine battery cutoff switch. They're good for 900 amps. You're not going to kill it. It'll be fine. The problem is though, they're large. They're about 5.5 inches in diameter.
Oh my God.
Is there something
made for boats?
Small, and the key comes out.
Is there something common we could like buy out of the Moss catalog or something?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is actually. If you go to the Austin Healy side, you'll see that Austin Healy has a nice cutoff switch. What I use on my MGB.
That Healy cutoff switch is even neater because it's got an extra wire that grounds the coil, so that it kills the engine. Not only does it shut the battery off, but it kills the engine. The one I got for my daughter was I had a big red key to it, a big red handle key, not just a knob.
That's the Hella switch, Hella.
Okay.
I think that's what I'm used to seeing quite a lot, is one with a big red key on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you just take it, you know, I put mine in behind the passenger seat because there was room on the B, and it was down low enough and you could run the cables to and from it without whole lot of trouble. So,
Well,
And,
mine's-
and it's easy to reach your hand back with your right hand and turn it on and off. I love that.
yes,
I use mine every time. So, yeah.
Mine is behind the driver's seat because I put it in when I still had two 6-volt batteries. So now I got a long ground cable and I can reach it from outside the car. Just reach behind the driver's seat and
Okay.
switch it.
sure. Well, it must be, it just doesn't look like that starter motor current. So you're gonna have to get your starting handle out more, Barney, and use that, huh?
Well, it's embarrassing when I pull into Walmart to get an oil change and the guy insists on driving the car into the bay and he comes in and the car won't start because that's the exact moment that switch failed.
Right, okay. Okay, John Fabry, agreed. I found Water Wetter has a very low surface tension that really helped find small leaks. A solid tight system with a standard glycol coolant would find leaks with Water Wetter instead. That annoyance pushed me away before ever finding that I love the stuff. It's an interesting comment from Mr. Fabry. Graham, and we talked about that Speedo, the GPS Speedo. Pat G, the total temp lowered by an oil cooler isn't the issue. It's cooling the oil that the engine bearings are riding on, keeping the crank bearings alive. So Pat G's making the case for the oil cooler, you know, I gotta hit the mute all switch. We got lots of background noise tonight from lots of places. But anyway, so yeah, Pat, you make a good comment there about the keeping the oil cool, because that's in the end, the engine can get hotter, cold, but that oil's got to be the right temperature. Donald Bartley, for your eyes only. I looked over your email and saw no link to your website. Oh, Marty's going to take care of that tomorrow. So anyway, Marty's going to, well, I'll talk to her and we'll make sure that there's a link to my website on my email. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be advantageous for your viewers to be able to hit one button and go right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Thumbs
very
up to you,
much.
Ben.
A lot of people are very generous. Oh, here's my timer to remind everybody. Funny that should come up. To remind everybody to go on my website. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Gerald Dalton, you have extremely clean fingernails for a mechanic. Well, I haven't been doing much wrenching for a while. That's for sure. Mike Baldwin, got a question. Input on temp sending units. So Mike, have you got a question? Mike Baldwin about temp sending units?
Hey, John. Hey, good evening to you.
Hey.
It's more or less a question slash statement. I got bit with the same bug in the debate that keeps going around the forums about the temp sending units and the wrong resistance. It looks like Moss may have made a change in their catalog. I'm giving you information from 3 years ago when I went through this personally. And at that time, the Moss catalog said I needed a certain part number for 66 to 76. And that one is that 760-180. And that is not the right one. It makes it read hot. I took that one out. Fairly new radiator, flushed the system. Only change was the sending unit. I put a 131-565 in, which was for the 77 up, swung it right back to the middle, runs just fine. So I made Moss aware of that, put it in the forum. Of course, you know, half the people said great, the other half argued me down that it wasn't correct, but I had a thermo gauge to say it. Bottom line is, if you go to the Moss site, which I'm looking at right now, 131-565 still comes up with no applicability charts. The one they replaced it with is 131-566, which is made by FAE and not intermotor like the other one. So they may have quietly snuck in, I hope, the correct one. It's still got the black versus the red, but the bottom line is the 131,565 called out in the catalog up until looks like about 3 years ago would make you read high. I mean, the wrong one would make you read high. So I always ordered the one that didn't, that was for the late models, and it worked fine.
So more to that is the gauges change between 76 and 77. So 68 through 76 is one type of gauge, and 77 through 80 there's another. And the resistance required to make it read accurately are different. So there's two different sending units.
And to use a technical term, it looks like Moss had them backwards in the catalog.
Well, could be, or it could be that the other one doesn't work or reads way too high or something. So yes, anyway, thank you very much for that. I checked a whole lot of them real early on years ago. I don't have the numbers handy, but I got the the temperature range from 0 to 100 Celsius. And what the temperature range should be. So it's just a sending unit, like the fuel sending unit or something.
Well, I've got a lot more details in the post from about 3 years ago on the MG Experience forum if you want to go there. But I even had to go in and put some other information there and confirm that my bimetallic voltage regulator still was it. Everything was still factory. I bought the car from the original owner, but I got kind of weary after a while giving the information facts, and there was the results. But after a while you get tired of being argued down when you got the facts.
Yep, when you got that's right. Well, there's two stabilizers. The earlier one is like a turn signal, and if you look at the voltage over time, it averages 10 volts, but it's either battery voltage or no voltage.
Right.
So it's on.
And I checked it. Yeah. Yep, check that.
You'd have to have a timer. They have to have a timer and clicking it, every time it was on. Oh my God. And the new ones are the Zener diodes, and they just give a constant 10 volts. So those are they're not mechanical. But the original mechanical ones, though, have got a little adjuster screw on them, so you can adjust them up or down.
Oh, wow. Cool. Anyway, took enough of your time, but bottom line is that I'd like to know if anybody orders a 131,566, how that works for them. But up until late 2018, early 2019, I had to order the one for the late model to make mine read correct with the factory, everything in it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you, buddy. You're welcome.
All right. Let's see. Noni Honum. John, can you put just a minute, overdrive unit on a standard 1622 transmission? No. Quick answer, no. Is a cross flow head or a supercharger a better upgrade for some more power? So if you want it, if you've got, we've got a 1622, so it sounds like we're talking about an MGA. The cheap trick on an MGA is to put a MGB differential into it, which is a 3.9 instead of a 4.1, which is probably what the 1622 engine only came in a 62. So they had a 4.1 diff, but a 3.9 is even better than that. And you can get 90 miles an hour at 5,000 RPM. It's not overdrive. It isn't as good as overdrive, but it's as good as you can get without putting overdrive in. And putting overdrive in, you've got to change the whole tunnel. You got to change the way the whole thing sets up. It's very complex. And the silver bullet to making your car run faster is just easy schmeezy. Easy, you can do it. You do it in 2 days. Is buy a supercharger. I mean, the price is phenomenal, but oh my gosh, I mean that's what wakes it up. Cross flow head. No, I'm no fan of a cross flow head. On an MGB, you can't reach the carburetors or the distributor or the oil filter. On an MGA, how would you reach anything? Because the bonnet opening is so much smaller. So if you want to go faster, first of all, you get the car tuned up and make it run as well as it possibly can. If you're still not satisfied, buy the blower. But oh my God, what is that? It's got to be $5,000 now, isn't it? 5 or 6 or something or other, plus the time to install it. So anyway, David, everybody, David here, but no camera or microphone. So we don't know if David's on or not. I'm confused which carbs my 72B has. They do have the thumb wheel adjuster at the bottom of the carburetor. So, and he's in Salt Lake. So anyway, so you got, if it's got an adjuster, if it's got an adjuster on the bottom of the carburetor that moves the jet up and down, those are HS carburetors. I like those. Now, Mr. Horner likes the other ones, the HIFs, or he's satisfied with them. I'm not. So anyway, professional difference of opinion. But anyway, the HS carburetors are more easily adjustable, and you can fiddle with the float bowls. But if you got to change the jet, carburetor has to come off. No question about that. Also, I'm in Salt Lake City at an elevation of 4,000 feet. Do I need to adjust the timing for the altitude? No, not the timing, but the mixture. Yes, the mixture for sure. And maybe even the needles. Maybe you've got to go to a leaner needle because you're up high. But for that, since you're not on, you can call me tomorrow, David, and talk to me about that, and I can tune you in. Or you can call Ian or Paul, if he's taken any calls yet, at Sports Car Craftsman in Arvada, Colorado, because they're at 6,000 feet, and they know a whole lot more about high elevation running than I do. So John from near Detroit, any problem using an airlift vacuum to fill the cooling system? I don't even know what that is. But if it does the job, there's no problem doing it.
John, I work at a Ford dealer, and all the new cars we fill with, you hook to the top of the radiator, hook compressed air to it, and it pulls a vacuum on the cooling system. And we can let the car sit for 10 minutes. If the vacuum doesn't drop, we've confirmed there's no leaks, and it fills it completely once you open this valve. So there's no chance of an air pocket. I'm just curious if it can hold to the, we pull like 20 inches of vacuum on this. You think the system can handle that?
That's a pretty good vacuum. That's a pretty good vacuum. It seems like you're stressing an older car. You know, that's a lot of vacuum.
20-inch vacuum is 2/3 of an atmosphere. It's about like 10 pounds of pressure, but the other direction.
Right. Okay.
I think it might collapse the radiator hose.
Yeah, well, you can tell that. So
it'll definitely it'll collapse the top radiator hose when it gets to full vacuum. But the best part is there's absolutely no air pockets in the system. That's the whole deal with using it on the newer cars. I'm just
yeah. Well, you'd have to. Yeah, you'd have to. Our cars, if you fill right through the radiator filler, or on 77 through 80, you know, above the thermostat, there's no problem. You don't get air pockets either, except for the MGC, which you get air pockets in those easily. So, but I don't know. Once you do it a couple of times, and then next time you can tell us, you know.
I definitely will. Thank you.
Okay. This is Doug from Chicago. Of course, the best anti-theft device on my daughter's 73 BGT is already installed, and that's a stick shift manual transmission. Yeah, I can't imagine too many of our cars get stolen. And if someone wants to steal one of our cars, putting a battery cutoff switch isn't going to stop them. You know, it's just catching the people who are what do they call it? You know, when it's just sitting there waiting to get stolen. So All right, well, hey, I'm down to the end here. I'm down to the end. We're at 9:10. We still got 125 people on, which is really nice. Anybody got any more comments about anything? I talked about the brake pads. I wanted to talk about the MGB register also. You know, it's a nice organization, and they've got a lot of technical stuff. I used to be the technical guy for it. I'm not anymore. Although they do print some of my Q&As in there, so forth. But they got, yes.
On the radiator, I tried pressure testing it and I pumped it up a little bit too much, and I popped the seal on the water pump, about 15 pounds.
Yep.
So you got to be aware how much you pump those things up. Or even pulling a vacuum, I would be aware of the seal on the water pump.
Okay, that's interesting. Yep, yeah. You don't want to go too far. Although usually it just blows the seal out of place, and then as once the pressure comes back down, it's okay. But you wrecked yours?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yes,
15 pounds is it. That's the highest cap that I ever saw working on any MG.
It wasn't the cap. I actually pumped the system up, and I was waiting to see if I had a small leak. And what happened was that, I was watching the needle, and then all of a sudden it went bang, and I lost the seal, and it started leaking out the water pump onto the the garage floor. So,
well, George, no good deed goes unpunished.
Absolutely right, but it's something to look out for. You don't want to over pressurize the system.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So this morning, when I was listening to the news, they bandied about that this is the 6th, or soon to be the 6th snowiest Grand Rapids winter in Grand Rapids ever. And this year, our snowfall is only second only to Buffalo. So.
And in Cleveland, we have the 3rd least snowiest winter ever.
Go figure.
Yeah, same down here in New York.
We're
same in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, glad you could help us out there taking our snow.
Hey, John, I left town.
You did?
Yes, I'm south right now.
Whereabouts?
Dunedin, Florida.
Yeah. Okay.
So
we're on flood watch here in California.
Anyway, so that's it.
20-year snow record in all over California.
Yeah, that's after years of hearing everybody whine and complain about no water in California. All of a sudden, it's like there's so much water you can't capture it. So oh my gosh.
Watch what you ask for.
Well, it'd be nice if it was just regular. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You mentioned a stick shift being a
deterrent.
Well, there was a thing on the news couple months ago. 2 young guys pulled a woman out of the car, jumped in her car, were going to hijack her car. A few seconds later, they got out and ran. It was a stick shift. It was a parking lot camera that caught it all.
Another one that will stop most of them, at least on the TD and the MGA, is the flyaway parking brake. You can see people get in the car and they'll push that button and push that button and push that button, and it won't release.
Customers do that too. I took a call from this years ago. A gal walked back into the grocery store and convinced the manager that she should be able to use the phone. This is before cell phones, and called me up and she said, I can't get my handbrake off. And I said, Janet, don't press the button. Just lift the handle. I'm not pressing the button. I said, Janet, just listen to me. Just lift the handle. And I didn't hear from her for about 20 years. And then she called back up again one time. So you must have gotten out of the parking lot. No. So yeah, that. And then the other thing on the earlier cars is the pull start. The pull start.
And that a lady in our club, her her husband died and left her the TD. She was giving it to her daughter. She called up a couple of us. We drove over there because she thought maybe she had a dead battery. She didn't know what. And they were sitting in the car turning that key as hard as they could turn it. They almost broke the damn key off.
Yeah.
And I sat in the car, the jaws dropped open.
Yeah.
You know, another thing we do if we're staying in a motel and I'm not sure about the area, I will take the rotor out of the distributor cap and take it in. Sometimes just pull the wire, but then if they know what they're doing, they can swap wires. But just take the rotor out, and they'll never figure out why they can't start it.
Jim
That used to be a high
Kerchesky.
school parking lot trick. Who would do that just to irritate guys?
Jim Kerchesky did that with he had a bright red like a 64 MGB, and he took screw the rotor. He took the cap and wires, took them inside at night. Came down in the morning, the car was gone. Somebody rolled it. You know, somebody if you want it. If they want your car, they'll take your car. You can't stop them. It's just, anyway, yeah, they recovered it about a year later, and then wouldn't give him the car back. He was so pissed because he'd already taken the insurance settlement for it, right? And then they recovered the car, and he wanted the car, and they said, no, we already paid you for it. It's like, well, it's my car, you know. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, if a professional thief wants your car, I don't care what you do, they're
No.
gonna take it. But it stops kids from joyriding and young punks that want to steal a car.
Yeah, crimes of opportunity. That's what I was hunting for before.
Yeah.
Well, here we are at 9:17, so I want to thank everybody for being on tonight. We'll have in 2 weeks. I think I was trying to think of somebody interesting to have come on. And I think maybe I'm going to get some newsletter editors on who will make an impassioned plea for people to write articles for their newsletters. These would be the National Club newsletters, but I think maybe I'll go for that next time. That'll be kind of fun. Anyway, and that will be in 2 weeks, which I think is right. I've just buggered this up. Just a minute. I think that's right after the Chicagoland swap meet. So it's the 27th. The 27th of March, which is the day after the swap meet. So we'll have all kinds of swap meet information and some more pictures to circulate. So I encourage everybody to service your car. You can go on my site and you can get the complete lubrication, which does not include changing the antifreeze. It's changing everything else in the whole car. Everything, the differential oil, the gearbox oil, the filling up the shocks, greasing the front wheel bearings. It includes everything, but we never added the cooling system because it was never a problem for as long as we had the shop going. But now this is 6-8 years later. So things do change. Anyway, if you want to get your car serviced and get it serviced well before you bring it out for the spring and summer, just go on my site, universityMotors.online or universitymotorsltd.com, and they've got those forms you can download as a PDF. So tried and tested forms built from years of experience. So. Okay, with that, I think I'm done. So anyway, thank you all, everybody very much.
We'll see you in Chicago.
Yes, absolutely. See you. I'll have a booth there. So stop around and say
We'll
hi.
be there.
Thanks, John. Good night.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure indeed, always. So yeah, it's nice to hear you. Barney, thanks for coming on tonight, adding so much information about the MGA radiators and so forth, and everybody. So thanks very much. Sean English, I see you're on there. Thank you. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks, John.
So,
I'll see you in Chicago in a couple of weeks. I'll also see you in Memphis in June.
Yes, Memphis in June, MGA owners, absolutely. My goal is to drive my MGA from Grand Rapids to Memphis. That's my goal. I don't know if I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be able to do it or not, but it's been a long time. The last long run I took in my MGA was from Grand Rapids to Altoona, PA, and it rained almost the whole way. I've never been as wet in my life driving the car as I was. And that was about 8 years ago, I think. So that was.
You loved it as a kid, though.
What's that?
I said you loved doing that as a kid.
Oh, yeah, now I'm 74, you know, it's like, are you kidding? Am I really gonna do that again? But that was only 8 years. I mean, I don't know, how old was I then? 60, 68, 66?
Just a kid.
Oh my God, I went to pay the toll. That's how long ago it was. They still had a toll booth open, you know, and I got my wallet out to pay the toll, and the bills were all stuck to each other. Doug, Chicago, Doug, Doug Clark, what was our count tonight?
High water mark was 192.
192.
Yeah, the comparable to the ideal operating temperature of the cars. So, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that's cool.
Hey, we'll probably see you in Altoona.
Yes, absolutely. I'm showing up there early, a couple of days early to do a tech seminar. We're going to build a midget 1500 engine, so that'll be fun.
It's already at the shop.
Great.
And I hope we'll see you up in Chicago.
All right. Tomorrow night, if you're a Philadelphia member, I see Roger's on. Thank you. I'm doing a private Zoom for the Philadelphia club. So, and if anybody else has got a club that you want to do a private Zoom, I'm happy to do that. Then we're down to 20, 30 people or something or other. We can get really in depth and people can ask questions about, well, but the red wire hanging underneath my dash, you know, so we can get a lot more detail. Anyway, everyone, thank you very kindly. And you can unmute yourself. Marty, thanks for being on tonight. I see you on there. And Tom.
Hey, John, I got a recommendation for a future tech session.
Yeah, Marty.
For years, decades even, I've been thinking about, we need to do a tech session on how to use digital voltmeters and test lights and continuity testers, how to do electrical debugging on the cars.
Good idea.
I like that.
Excellent idea. Excellent idea. I'm going partway there tomorrow.
Yes, do that.
So, okay. All right. That's one. But what I'm gonna have to do then is actually go up to my shop and get my cameraman up there to follow me around, because I can't just sit here with my kitchen cabinets behind me. And as soon as I get a green screen, I'm to get up my nice University Motors background again, but I've got to get a green screen. Anyway, yeah, okay. Yeah, because a voltage drop test, oh my gosh. I almost want to say, throw away those meters. Sometimes the meters are handy, sometimes they are. But just a 12 volt test light, oh my gosh, you can tell so much from a 12 volt test light. So anyway, everybody, thank you very kindly. Thanks for being here. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks. We got a lot of people on tonight. A lot of people are, oh my gosh. I'm looking here at all the names here that are still up. We've got 105 people still on. So anyway, you can unmute, say goodbye, and
adios,
John.
Goodbye, John.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much, John.
Good night, John. Thanks.
good night, John.
Thank
Night, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Good night, John.
Night, John.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, John. Thank you.
Good night, John from Pennsylvania, where we have no snow.
Okay, good night.